Today we're going to be talking about The Godfather. Take it away, Michael. Tell us what you think.
Well, my thoughts on The Godfather are unconventional. I know a lot of people who put it as the top 100 in the top 100 and even at number one. And I want to make clear that that as filmmaking, as a piece of filmmaking, of course I respect it. The acting is terrific. The production is very good. Very good. It's excellent. You can't, in terms of acting, in terms of pacing, in terms of filmmaking, you can't do much better than that. And Coppola was at his peak. He was a comparatively young man. Had not made that many films. He did write the script to Patton, which was a big film in its day, about 1970-ish. And so, he'd worked in Hollywood, but this was his, and would always be his big film, Godfather and Godfather 2. I saw it in Boston, Godfather 1, in 1972. And so I was 26 years old in the beginning of 1972. And, I'm Sicilian, the background, I'm Sicilian, I come out of New York City. And while I was enthralled with the picture, there were two things that I got right away. One was, it was one of the first long films that didn't have an intermission. Usually on a film like that was like 2.5 hours long, whatever it was, like Lawrence of Arabia had an intermission. Dr. Zhivago had an intermission. And intermissions became a thing of the past with The Godfather. And I noticed that at the time. And that was back when there was a smoking section in the theater, which really seems long ago. But the main thing is, and I said this to people I knew at the time, that if I was a film critic, if I was a film critic of the New York Times or the Boston Globe, the illustration of my review would be the photographs of the principal actors, and beneath them, photographs of the people they played, because it was all based on actual things that the mafia had done, and actual gangsters. People like, I wrote this down, I'm looking for my notes. People like Albert Anastasia, like the Luciano family, Frank Costello, Vito Genovese. These were all Tony the Ant Spilotro, the Gambino family, Dutch Schultz, Lepke, Mayor Lansky, Lucky Luciano. And if you had the photograph of the actual guy in his prime, under the actors would look like mama's boys, all of them. These guys, an actor, by definition, wants you to like him or her. Even if they're playing Lady Macbeth, they want you to like them. They are naturally appealing. They have simpatico with the camera. That's why they're movie stars, or become movie stars. The camera can read their minds. And the actual guys are not that at all, even the handsome ones. There's something in their faces that's missing. And what's missing is what makes most people human. You look at the faces. The faces are hard. There's no mercy. There's no charm. They can charm each other with their Italian and Jewish ways. There's that kind of ethnic thing. But they're not there to charm anybody. And even Brando, who plays a Sicilian, he doesn't just play an older man. He plays a Sicilian older man. It's a great performance. Especially that performance when he dies in the garden. He doesn't just move like an old man. He moves like a Sicilian old man. He moves like the old men who sat in the parks. He moves like my grandfather, Vincenzo Ventura. It was uncanny when I saw that. I went, oh my God. Guy from Omaha. He understands how to do this. But an actor wants the audience to respond. These guys look completely different in their lives. Now, for a brief time when I was 19, I was 18, I was a messenger boy delivery guy on Manhattan for an outfit that delivered everywhere, to businesses, to posh places. And by mistake, I got onto Carmine DeSapio's private elevator. There were two elevators in this building. It wasn't a tall building, but one was only for Carmine DeSapio and his people, and the other was for everybody else. And I just got in the wrong elevator, and nobody stopped me. There was somebody there, but they didn't stop me because I was a messenger. I had a package. They figured, those guys go in and out. I get to the top, I realize I'm in the wrong place. Now, Carmine DeSapio was a politician, but he was a politician by virtue of his ties with the Frank Costello mob. Everybody knew this, and it didn't hurt him being the last head of what was called the Tammany Hall in New York City. They were the political bosses of New York City. First it was Irish, then it was Sicilian. And if you wanted the building built, if you wanted to change a highway sign, you had to go through these guys. You had to pay people money. And Carmine DeSapio, who would have been in his mid-50s, late 50s, he gets on the elevator with his two bodyguards. And I knew who he was. I knew I was perfectly safe. But these were scary people. And I was used to scary people. I thought I was. These were scary people. They did not have that quality that we say is human. I was a bug to them. I was in no danger whatsoever. And yet my body was scared. Because these were people, if it had been in their interest, would have stuffed me without even thinking about it. I would have been a parenthesis. And so this is to say, you compare The Godfather with a film like Goodfellas, and I've said this before, you don't want the people in Goodfellas in your neighborhood. You don't want them as neighbors. You don't want them in your house. You don't want to mess with them at all. You don't want to go into their bar. In The Godfather, you're loving them. You're rooting for them. And so right there you have this manipulative lie. Because, interestingly, the mafiosi that the Godfathers and his people are against, they look greasy. They look like immigrants. They look like the sons of immigrants. They look, they're not especially handsome. There's something just oily about them. All of them. Except the guy who plays Meyer Lansky. He looks a bit like Meyer Lansky. Although, again, Meyer Lansky has that quality of no mercy. So there was that these guys, the visual manipulation that was going on, so that you like these guys, you're for these guys. Now, you're in a world, as the title suggests, that's totally patriarchal. A world where women have no authority. Where women have no function but to have children. That's why in Godfather 2, the greatest insult, Michael Corleone's wife, his very American, wife, the greatest insult she could do, the greatest damage she could do, is abort his child. Because that's the function of those women. That's it. And so you're in a world of men at their worst, and women is nothing. And then, as if that isn't enough, what's going on here? What's the conflict? The conflict is pure capitalism. Plain and simple capitalism. Here you have a corporation on one side, a business, and what's their business? Extortion. Gun running, the kind of loan sharking, the kind of thing, and this was gambling, of course, illegal gambling, and legal gambling once it came to Vegas. And the thing that, a way that they made their money, a big chunk of their money actually, besides fixing racism, this and that and the other, is they'd invest in a business that was kind of in trouble. And they would milk that business, they would money launder through that business, and they'd sell all that, they'd leave people with nothing. They did it over and over. And these were family businesses in the neighborhood. These weren't big corporations they were stealing from. These were restaurants. They loved the restaurants, take control of restaurants. You could launder all kinds of money and do all kinds of stuff with control of restaurants. So their business is crime, and they make it a business. It's political facts. So it's corrupting politicians. And that's their business. Those are the good guys. Murder, of course. Murder for hire, murder for punishment, murder as a form of business tactic, murdering witnesses, intimidating witnesses. The guys they're against do all of that, plus they want to do the drug trade. Now, if you watch Goodfellas, you see very accurately how the drug trade was the downfall of the Italian mafia, because the soldiers, the lesser dons and their soldiers, could make as much money and buy as much influence as the don. And once that hierarchy crumbled, it really shattered. And the Russian mob came in and other mobs came in, so that the Italians and the Sicilians in particular no longer had control. So really, you're looking at this ballad to capitalism. There's this corporation and there's this corporation. These guys are bad because they want to sell drugs in the neighborhood. This corporation will only sell drugs in the neighborhoods of color. These guys want to sell drugs everywhere. These guys, as one guy says at the meeting, they do business in their grandmother's neighborhood. These guys, if you live in their neighborhood, nobody's going to steal anything. Nobody's going to do anything violent without paying a price. I'll let the gangs do it, because the gangs of kids, that's how the toughest of those kids are going to be mafiosi. They know that. That's how they came up. But, so there's this one difference, drugs, and that's what gets the Godfather, Marlon Brando Godfather, killed. So it's this ballad to capitalism, and nobody says it. And all the stuff I've read about the Godfather, I have not read that this movie is basically a tale of capitalism. There is a business interest, another business interest wants to horn in on it. They're fighting over business. They even call it business. Michael even says to the senator, I'm a businessman. This is business. The guy who set Michael up said, tell Mike that I always liked him personally. This was just business. And it's a metaphor for business. Now, people have said that, but they haven't said this movie is on the side of what it is showing. It wants you to like these guys. It wants you to root for these guys. What are you rooting for? What you're actually rooting for is my neighborhood. The stakes are my neighborhood. You want these guys or these guys to control my neighborhood, because I came from the kind of neighborhoods where they have a lot of influence. That's what you want. And it is, I've never seen that said. I've never seen that examined. And so, as a young man looking at it, sitting in the smoking section, I remember coming out of that film. I saw it with a woman named V, who I got to college with, the year that I spent in college. And I was really ambivalent. I said the thing about the newspaper and putting the comparing the photographs, and that these guys, these actors are mama's boys. Come on, they're trying to please. They can't help it. Not a great actor like Brando, as Ellen Barkin said. He's up there and he's giving you something that's not for sale. But these other really, really good actors who we hadn't seen much of yet, Pacino, De Niro, and all the very Italian and very Jewish-looking guys that they got for those films. Because the Italian mob and the Jewish mob, Lucky Luciano was the head of his gang when he's a kid. We're talking 16, 18. Meyer Lansky was the head of his gang. The Jewish gangs and the Italian gangs, they avoided fighting, but sometimes they fight if they appeared in the same place. Both gangs hated the Irish, and they did not avoid fighting the Irish. First thing the Italian mafias did was wipe out the Irish mob. The Irish mob came back in the 70s in Boston, mainly, a neighborhood in New York. But in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there was no Irish mob. So the two gangs meet. And as Meyer Lansky said, and he lived to be an old man, they met, Lucky and Lansky looked at each other, and he said that we understood each other. And they formed an alliance between the Jewish mob and the Sicilian mob. And that alliance eventually created Las Vegas. It almost took over Cuba, as Godfather 2 shows, but it didn't. The Castro Revolution stopped that. But created a city whose laws at the time were completely different from the laws anywhere else. Gambling was legal. Prostitution became legal, but from the first it was just overlooked rather, by design, by all the law enforcement in Nevada. Prostitution, by the way, was legal in Deadwood, South Dakota until 1980-ish. Because knew about it, it just sailed under the radar. In any case, these two guys, they were really smart. The United States government during World War II went to Lucky Luciano and his organization to control the dock workers, because the mafia owned the dock workers at that time. So there wouldn't be a dock strike and disrupt the war. So the government and these guys winked at each other all the time. You get something like The Sopranos, and those guys can't run a pizzeria without somebody getting killed. These guys were smart. Al Capone, I'm not a big fan, but he was only 27 when he was the boss of Chicago. These guys were smart. And The Godfather does do that. He gives them, it portrays them as intelligent. And that's the thing I like best about it. They were not Scarface kind of gangsters. But to put it at the top of the list is a way of saying the content doesn't matter. A way of saying all that matters about the art is the doing of the art. What it's about, as long as they do the art really well, doesn't matter. Now, a few things are taboo, but not, interestingly enough, drug dealing, murder for profit, all of that, that's not taboo. That's just business as usual. And that's me and The Godfather. Now,
Okay.
on the one hand, yeah, were you going to ask me something?
No, go ahead.
On the one hand, I step back from it, and you see Martin Scorsese. Now, and once I started seeing Martin Scorsese films, I could put my finger on what was very wrong with The Godfather. Francis Coppola is an Italian descent, Italian-American, from the Midwest. Martin Scorsese is a Sicilian-American from Hell's Kitchen, literally wherever it was in the neighborhood he's from in Manhattan. Francis Ford Coppola is portraying his ideals of Italians. These guys aren't Sicilians, they're Italian. Scorsese, in Goodfellas, in Casino, in The Irishman, he's portraying Sicilians. And he's portraying people, as I said, you don't want them as neighbors. He's portraying people in Casino. He's got Tony the Ant Spilotro, he gives him another name. But, what's his name? Joe Pesci plays Tony the Ant. And Tony the Ant was too crazy even for the mafia. As that film shows. That film gives it, tells it pretty much like it happened. Which is why I don't like to see that film. I saw that film once, I don't want to watch it again. Well, Tony the Ant blew up. It was Lefty Rosenthal, the guy who invented casino betting. Put it on the racetrack betting in casinos, all that stuff. He was the guy who innovated that at the Stardust. And, I mean, he was at the Stardust, he innovated that, and then everybody got on with the party. But the thing was over a woman, blah, 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 all that happened. And finally, the mob had to kill Tony the Ant. Because Tony the Ant was totally out of control. And you don't want to be in the same room with a Tony the Ant kind of guy. The Joe Pesci guy in Goodfellas is a Tony the Ant kind of guy. And you know, when you're a kid, you want to be Robert De Niro in Godfather too. You want to have that dignity. You want all that. When you're a kid, you don't want to be Tony the Am unless there's something really wrong with you. You don't want to be Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. You don't want to be Joe Pesci in Casino. The two artists who are masters of the medium, Coppola and Scorsese, came at it from really different ethnic viewpoints. Coppola made his people Goombas. There's all that Goomba, cannoli sort of comradeship. Scorsese puts food in his films because that's part of that ethnicity. And he shows one of the Godfathers in jail, when they're finally in jail, slicing the garlic with a razor blade so thin that it dissolves in the sauce. And Ray Liotta talks about it. You see footage of it. But it isn't this glad hand, cheerful stuff. That's generally not a Sicilian scene. And what else I want to say? Something I've never, but we won't even talk about Godfather 3, because that's not real.
Yeah.
That's just total froth. It doesn't pretend to be serious. But if you, what am I saying? Okay. Michael Corleone orders that his brother be killed. And he gives the order. He doesn't say kill him. He says he must something. Sorry, how's it go? He must live as long as my mother is alive. Something like that. He's not going to kill his brother while his mother's alive. But his mother dies, he's going to kill his brother. Out of some kind of, revenge, because his brother can't do any more harm. It's that he was the Godfather, and he was defied. So, it's omerta, as the Sicilians say, the code of honor. He has to die. Not in front of his mother, not while his mother's alive, but he has to die. But what I felt was honest about Godfather 2, even though it was kind of revoked in Godfather 3, is that the last shot of Pacino in some rural place, sitting in a chair, bundled up, was to me the shot of a man who had the humanity totally wrung out of him. Had allowed that to happen to himself. Had been part of it, accomplice in it. And that was an honest shot. That was the only thing I found honest in both films. They're wonderful filmmaking. But if we are, as artists, writers, filmmakers, going to present something, as John Cassavetes would say, that has some vague thing that life has. It's can't put a finger on it, but it's there. It's why every language has some word that we would translate as soul. And when you go to this, what does soul defining it, and yet when you say that person's lost his soul, you know exactly what you're talking about. People know exactly what you're talking about. And at the end of it, you see Michael Corleone, and you see a man who's lost his soul. People know what they talk about. People use that expression even if they don't believe in God and souls and anything. People know what they're talking about. All that. And yet, for the rest of the film, as it's progressed to there, we haven't really seen the soul. We've seen a performance of it. Until the two death scenes, Michael Corleone, who's not dead, but in that chair, and his father Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando. The two death scenes, interestingly, struck me as having that vague quality that Cassavetes talked about, the soul, being alive, in a way that to me, the rest of the film is not alive. The rest of the film is performance. It has moments I like. I can recite a lot of lines. Don't worry about a thing, Johnny Five Angels. You know. But there's performance, and there's something that transcends performance, which is what I look for in a film. And The Godfather, in that sense, I think is wildly overrated. It's not great filmmaking. Great filmmaking has got to have soul as well as style. And The Godfather finally is a tale of greed. And as a tale of greed, it works. It works wonderfully. It's very well told. That doesn't mean it's a great film.
Okay, well, I've got a bunch of different layers to why I don't like The Godfather. I do like it. I think that the acting is very good, as you said. I think that there's a family atmosphere that was created between the actors that really works. That they must have. I think they really worked on that off screen a lot. And they have a very natural way with each other. I think that's the most remarkable thing about the movie, is that you can really see the relationships are very realistic in it. I don't think James Caan gets enough credit in The Godfather. I think I think he does the best job of acting in The Godfather. But to begin on why I don't like The Godfather, obviously there's the humanizing and glamorization aspect of it, which I didn't realize you when I was a kid, when I saw it and I liked it and everything, and then you told me a story about a guy that had a bunch of gambling debts, and then they turned his daughter into a prostitute. And I never forgot you telling me that, in like the visceral way that you told me. You told me that. I must have been like 9 years old or something, and so that totally just changed my entire.
I'm sorry, I told you.
No, it was good. I mean, it totally changed my entire perception of organized crime, and because to me, at that age, looking and thinking like I don't have a chance in like corporate world or in mainstream world, like one of my only choices is to be some kind of criminal or something, right? And I think that humanizing aspect is, I could go on and on about, because it's something that Hollywood and major media just constantly does. One of the worst examples is The Sopranos, obviously. There's that aspect which is kind of obvious, but one of the biggest things for me is that it really solidified in America's mind that the fallacy that organized crime in America is Italian or Sicilian,
Right.
solely
Yeah.
Italian or Sicilian, and 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 I could see how that would also piss you off deeply. But this is there's an aspect to the whole story of organized crime in America where they use Italians as kind of a birdcage liner for organized crime.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you could say, I mean, it's kind of accepted now that Meyer Lansky tipped off the cops to the Appalachian meeting. And then you
Mhm.
see these hearings that occur after that, especially the hearing with Valachi, where and then this book comes out about Valachi that sells millions of copies, and that organized crime as Italian thing really picks up over the late '50s through the '60s,
Mhm.
um, and I think that Puzo and Coppola um, kind of understood that when after the and maybe even before the Godfather came out, they understood that had occurred, and there were people like Columbo, the Columbo family, that like played into this whole thing, and
Mhm.
Columbo creates like the Italian, like some kind of Italian power group or something, like the Black Panthers or something, right? But I think they understood, Coppola and Puzo understand that uh, before or after they make this film, and so they make Godfather 2, and they put in the Lansky character in Godfather 2. Now,
Mhm.
the the now Sergio Leone comes out with Once Upon a Time in America, which is the total other
Yes.
side of it, and is a very realistic depiction, actually, of organized crime in America. And his film gets totally mutilated and is not even seen for 10 or 15 years, and especially
Mhm.
not in the state that Sergio Leone wanted it shown in. Um, so I think that dynamic of using kind of just shitting on Italians now, even outside of Hollywood, that this occurs where and they have Italians on both sides where they start prosecuting all these Italian mafia families in the 1980s, and the guy they
Mhm.
have prosecuting them, they choose this Italian guy Giuliani, right,
Mhm.
to talk to the press. But in actuality, he's basically the press guy for this prosecution. He's not the one actually carrying out the prosecution. The guy who's actually carrying out these prosecutions is Chertoff, who
Mhm.
eventually becomes the head of Homeland Security. But
Right.
there's this whole dynamic
Now
there.
he's got a face.
Yeah.
He's got one of those
Well,
faces. He should have been in a film.
his name actually means son of the devil, which is interesting too.
Hmm.
But that dynamic there, I think, is it's kind of makes me look askew at Puzo and Coppola and them participating in that, because it it I mean, your average American just thinks of organized crime as Italian, when a lot of times they were more like like I said, like the firewall for law enforcement. um and
Mhm.
uh and like you said, a lot of those guys, I mean, they put Valachi up there. I mean, the guy's got an IQ of like 80. I mean, a lot of these guys weren't very intelligent people. So and then this other aspect to organized crime, like you said, Lansky dies an old man. He dies relaxed at his home in Florida or whatever, an old man. And these other guys, a lot of those guys end up, Chertoff sends them to jail, and they end up dying in jail of cancer or something like that, right? So
Mhm.
that's kind of my objection to the whole thing. Now, Puzo, uh, I think the novel of The Godfather was really just kind of a pulp novel about the mafia, but it had a skeleton of a story to it that they added on to and kind of used it to what's the word? They added onto it and put flourishes onto it and made it a little richer. But and Puzo is a most of his early career he's writing for men's magazines, right? And he's a good storyteller, and and he and after he makes money in Hollywood, he does kind of write a book that is deeper and more literary. It's called Fools Die, and it's kind of like a Saul Bellow esque depiction of Puzo's life. But most people don't read that book. Um, Whether he actually wrote the Sicilian or Omerta or those later books is questionable to me. But I, I think that making Godfather 2, that they kind of tried to address that dichotomy of the Lanskys and the Lucianos, and but they still have, Al Pacino comes out on top in the end, but
Right, right.
but and then I just, as far as the actors involved, I can't stand Diane Keaton, and that's a really hard part of those movies for me to watch. Is I just there's just something about her
She
that,
was really miscast.
yeah, I mean,
But
she does play that waspy type well, like I think that's kind of what they wanted. I'm not sure if she was really she's just like this. There's something that's not palatable to her about, like, that kind of frantic waspy woman is like something I really don't like Mia Farrow's and people like that. I just don't like that. But and then I've never really liked Al Pacino either. I just don't like him, and there's just something that distasteful about him to me too. And I like Marlon Brando a lot in it, a lot, and I liked De Niro a lot in the second one. I've always liked De Niro, but yeah, I think to me the best thing about The Godfather is the relationship between the actors and the quality of acting. Even though I don't like Al Pacino, he does a good job, in that. Um,
yeah,
it's the whole arc of Michael Corleone is kind of questionable, I could never really buy his whole character arc. It just seemed kind of cheesy and cookie cutter to me. But yeah, those are my objections to The Godfather.
yeah. It's interesting about De Niro because De Niro, uh, much more than any other actor of his generation, uh, and 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 the only actress I would say is Jenna Rollins, comparable, is that if you see Taxi Driver and Mean Streets and The Godfather 2 and Raging Bull,
Yeah,
etc., you're seeing totally different people.
yeah, yeah,
He's playing completely different people with different levels of intelligence. Jake LaMotta is not a brilliant guy. He's not even a smart guy. Uh, and and or the Irishman, Scorsese. He was too old to play it, but when you see past that, he really plays the guy. You really believe it when the storekeeper, I don't know, put his hand on his daughter's shoulder, and he goes in and just beats the guy
yeah,
almost to death. You believe it. You believe Taxi Driver. That guy isn't a smart guy either, and yet he is. He's smart enough to get away with what he did. is the actor. You probably know this, but the scene, the great scene, the scene you always think of in Taxi Driver, with De Niro going, "Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else here. You must be talking to me." He improvised that. That was all him.
Really?
Yeah. That came. He should have gotten a screen credit for that. That came out of their rehearsals, and he's doing that, and then suddenly we got to put that in the film.
Yeah. What did you think of Pacino as Hoffa?
What I liked about him is that he wasn't likable. That's what I liked about the performance. You didn't like the guy, and usually actors won't go that far. At this point in life, Pacino doesn't give a shit. But I don't think he was great as Hoffa. I think he was okay as Hoffa.
I thought Jack Nicholson was way better as Hoffa.
Yes. He was way better as Hoffa. Way better. He also, Jack Nicholson, they don't film him this way usually, but now he hasn't been in the film for years as far as I know. He's built like a fire hydrant. He's a stocky little Irishman.
Yeah, he looks like Hoffa. For sure.
And he has that square face like Hoffa did.
Yeah.
And that helps, but he's also a very skilled actor. I don't think he's a great actor. I don't think he's on the level of De Niro. But he's a very skilled actor. He does what he does very well.
Yeah.
And
Al Pacino came off as too soft for me, like way too soft as Hoffa.
Oh yeah, very much too soft.
Yeah,
too human. But by that time, I guess I was used to Al Pacino. He did a really good performance in Dog Day Afternoon. And
yeah.
And I liked him in Serpico. But after that, he didn't do much that I really dug. I don't think he reached with De Niro or Robert Duvall. They reach. Robert Duvall and Lonesome Dove. He said in an interview, "You keep your Hamlet. Gus and Lonesome Dove is more complex than Hamlet." But he reaches. He can play that Gus and Lonesome Dove. He can play that guy in Tender Mercies. He can play the colonel or whatever officer he was in Apocalypse Now. But Pacino stopped reaching. By the time the 70s were over, he stopped reaching.
Yeah, he just plays Pacino in his movies. He's the same guy. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Angels in America.
No. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Yeah.
He plays Roy. What's his name?
Roy Cohn. Yeah.
He plays Roy Cohn. He plays Roy Cohn convincingly, which I find very interesting. Because Roy Cohn's got to be one of the dirtiest of the dirty men.
Yeah, for sure.
In American history. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing is the whole Roy Cohn's whole involvement with all these guys too. He's kind of the guy in the background. I think that one of the things that the Italian mafia never really was skilled enough at it was the blackmail aspect, right? And I think that the fact that Meyer Lansky was blackmailing J. Edgar Hoover had a big was a big factor in them concentrating on the Italian mafia too, getting them out of the way. But Godfather 3 is awful. Go ahead.
And in terms of what what you were saying about Italians, the one Sicilian word, because Sicilian is a very different language than Italian.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the differences. I don't speak either language, even though it was spoken around me when I was a kid. But and my cousin Rocco tells me I don't even pronounce the curse words right anymore. So, you know, you know, what can I say? I lose my cred. But mafia is the one Sicilian word that has gone around the world. People talk about the Russian mafia. People talk about the other word now is cartel. That is coming out of the Latin American gangs. But what they all have in common that was not true of the Russian, Jewish, and Irish mob. The Russian, Jewish, and Irish mobs left the families alone. It made a difference to people who were active and the people who weren't. They call them civilians sometimes in the Sicilian mob. They did not attack. They'd blackmail you. They didn't leave the families alone that way. They'd ruin you. Somebody took a hit on you, they were happy to do it. You give them X $1,000. But they didn't, for revenge on you, they didn't kill your wife and kids. I was approached, stop me if I've told this story already. I was approached to write a script. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a huge, Colombia is where the coke comes from, right?
Yeah.
Colombian criminal. He was the head of all that. And I was considering it. HBO wanted me. A guy at HBO was asking me, this was 30 years ago, asking me would I consider working on a miniseries, as they used to call them, about this guy. And I said, let me think about it, and I read about this guy. This guy wasn't a gangster. He was a war criminal. He killed families. He killed villages. And I said to the producer, whom I'd worked for before, whom I liked, and I worked for again, actually, later. I said, look, an actor, you get an actor, you get a big name actor, or you make a big name, an actor getting his name in the role. They're going to want the audience to like this guy, to root for him. You're going to want a rooting thing like in The Godfather. And this guy's a war criminal. This guy, he didn't kill dozens, he killed hundreds. He killed innocent people, in the sense of completely innocent people. They were just kind of adjacent to the crime. But whole families, judges' families. I said, I can't do it. I don't want to be, I don't want to be in this guy's head for the year it'll take me to write these things.
Yeah.
But two, I don't think you should make a fucking film.
Yeah.
And this guy's a good guy, and we could talk to each other like this.
It'd probably be dangerous to make the movie, right? To be the writer.
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
Especially dangerous to do it right. Not dangerous if you're going to make him, a cult figure. But this producer, don't want to name names, but he's still working. But he said, I understand your point of view. And it was this thing of, don't tell me not to make this movie. But I understand your point of view. But it never got made. Maybe somebody wrote it, but it never got made.
Did you ever see American Me?
No.
You should see that. That's a good movie.
American Me?
Yeah, with Edward James Olmos. It's about the Mexican mafia.
I like Almost. He's really good. American Me. I will. I will look at it, but not before I look at the Mel Gibson movie, Pascal Ridge.
Yeah, it's it came to mind. Another interesting thing is that in British television shows and movies, like during the '60s and '70s, the depiction there was a few television shows about organized crime gangs, and they always depicted it as really depressing and really got across that like you wouldn't want to be involved in this subculture at all. Like there's no humanizing or glamorizing of organized crime in that in British show business then, which is interesting. Yeah, just thought I'd bring that up.
No, that is interesting.
I mean, I guess Long Good Friday, that's kind of a gives a cautionary tale of that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was a good picture.
yeah,
That
it
was a
is.
good crime picture.
Yeah. Well, okay. You all talked out?
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Okay.